Hi, and welcome to the XRTK Podcast, your weekly, bi-weekly, whenever we can get around to recording this series, where we're talking everything XRTK, everything AR, VR, mixed reality, wherever it takes your fancy. So I'm Simon Darkside Jackson. I'm your host today with my co-host, Dino, who we shall not ever pronounce his surname on air.
Yeah. Just stick to Dino.
Yeah,
Hi,
Dino,
everyone.
Simon, it's a job done. Yep, so I'm one of the founders for the XRTK, or the principal architect, and Dino here is a long-time contributor and general PR
and user, obviously. Use.
That is one of the most exciting things, the fact that, we don't just build this stuff, we use it to build projects for clients and things like that and get it out there. So we are, as they say, dog fooding our XRTK to make sure we use what we make and we make what we use.
Exactly. Best way to do it.
Right, so we've got another fun and exciting show for you today, where we're going to have, as every project does when they're trying to do new things, we'll show you what it takes to get the XRTK installed and get set up. Nice quick run through of how the system works and what it makes it unique and different to almost anything else out there, apart from this click once and deploy anywhere, or we will do when we get the build system finished and not just rely on Unity to do things. And have a quick talk about XRTK's platform system and how that's made up, how versatile it is, and how it reacts to how your approaches work. And Dino has forthwithingly approved to actually have a walk through his hand system, which is by far one of the biggest advancements we've had in the XRTK in a long time. Are you ready to demo? Are the demo gods willing?
I hope so. I'm ready. I think it's ready for the world to see it.
We can but try. Okay, so kicking off the day, at some point we'll start having news. We'll think about news for XR and XRTK. But right, so if we switch over here, there's the main XRTK website at xrtk.io. And in here, as we said before, is everything you need to know to get started with XRTK and working with things. But as ever, any comments and suggestions, just simply file them into our GitHub repo and we'll get back to them straight away. Or in fact, just join us on our Discord, where we're always willing to chat and moan, complain, and talk about all things XR. But anyway, so you're a new user, you want to get used to XRTK and what it means and what makes this stand apart. If you watched our last podcast, you saw a lot of what goes into how the XRTK is made up. But we know how it's made. Let's see how it helps our projects and gets going. So we're going down to our getting started pages here, especially for installing. And there's a lot of information here about how the different ways we do. The primary way to get access to the XRTK is using Unity's new Unity Package Manager, which we'll happily show off now. But there's other different ways, because there's the Unity's native package manager at the moment. It only really advertises Unity's own packages. So for other solutions and third-party applications, the store's not really ready for it yet. It's still focused on the old asset pipeline kind of way. But we go through here to the releases page on our GitHub, and you'll see whatever our latest release is. We got several instructions, so we can either do this manually, where we can edit our manifest.json in our packages folder in our solution. I'll quickly look at that in a minute. Or my preferred way is we've actually provided you a little installer asset, which basically does all the work for you. This doesn't put the XRTK into your project. What it does is register the XRTK with Unity and then tells it to download the SDK, which then in turn also downloads the XRTK's core framework. If you recall from the slide deck yesterday, the way the toolkit's made up is the fact that there's all the different component things set out. So we've got our core framework itself, we have all the individual platforms, and then we've got things like the SDK, UX, and other things which are made up of. So here's my Unity project, where I've previously downloaded that nice little Kickstart out it. If I want to do the other way, I simply right-click on the packages, show in Explorer, which will happily show you eventually. It will show me my actual packages folder from my Unity project. I go into here. There's my manifest.json. I edit it with what I want to use. I use Notepad++ here. And then I can copy what we had on the page simply into the top of this file. Generally, that can get a bit messy. So the easier way to do this, if I go back to Unity, I simply go Assets and select my Assets folder. That caught me out, Dino, quite a while ago. Is that if you have the packages folder selected, you cannot then go and try to import an asset. That threw me. I was going to raise Unity bugs and everything, but no. You have to select the Assets folder if you want to import an asset. And if you want the Unity Package Manager, you have to select it. Yeah, it's a weird thing. So if you don't select the Assets folder, the Import Package menu option is disabled.
I didn't know that. I didn't run into it yet, but I mean, yeah.
I come back.
It's a
yeah. So I'll go Custom Package. I'll go my downloads here, and I've got my XRTK Unity package. And if I open that up, in here there's a few files, but really all these here there is to actually do all the hard work for you, is to edit your manifest, put the XRTK in, and start it downloading. And this simply keeps up to date with how Unity changes. So this works even up to Unity 2020 for actually importing the package. But I think the latest version we've been working with is the LTS for 2019.4. We're testing and trialing with 2020 because some things were removed. You've been experimenting there, haven't you, Dino, with trying to get working with the package on the latest betas for Unity.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
it's a challenge. Yeah,
as always. Yeah.
So as we pull it up now, XRTK will prompt you automatically about which package you want to install from the library. And this is kept up to date with whatever the latest platforms that keep getting installed. Obviously, this is just the starter. Once you've got it in, then all the rest of the packages, even the preview and development packages, will also show up in the Unity Package Manager, which we'll show you. It's very simple. I'm just going to install the SDK for this time, so I'll uncheck the rest of the platforms, just so we can walk through everything else. And I select Add. And then what that's doing is it's registering with the package manager, telling it where to get the packages from, and then telling Unity, go and install this and also any dependencies. The good thing about the package manager is it does have a dependency walker. So if in your package you have dependencies registered, it will also download those as you install them. That hasn't always worked smoothly, but it does seem to work at the moment. It's just one of those things. I can't wait for the day. I can't wait for the day for Unity to actually start putting asset packages now the Unity package managers into the asset store. It's going to make life a lot easier, especially.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot easier. Yeah.
I mean, Unity is good because you can add packages from assets. You can add packages from a Git URL, so you can add it directly from Git. Also, there are sort of open standards kind of repositories for these packages, so you can register Node.js as a source. There's also the Open UPM packages, which is fantastic. XRTK is also published to the Open UPM store, so that means you have one registry registered, and then anything that's on there, you'll show up in your Unity Package Manager. The only caveat there is that if you don't set filters on what it gets, you'll get everything. And the Unity Package Manager can get a little slow when it starts up. But it's only when you're looking, trying to find, so it's what you can do at the moment.
But I was surprised, actually, a little spoiler, basically, that in the latest Unity version, 2020.1, that just got released, the package manager feels much faster than in the previous versions. At least that's my impression.
That is good. I've heard good things about 2020. Some improvements, which for 2020 is an improvement. I've also how have you found that asset store experience? Because I've heard some people say that's not great. But maybe it'll get fixed.
Well, there is no experience basically because they removed it from the editor. Do you mean that?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm fine with that. I really didn't bother looking through the asset store out of the editor very much. So I think it makes sense, and if it helps to speed up the editor and basically separate these things from each other, maybe now the asset store team can work better independently from the editor team, and I think it makes sense. Not so worried about it.
I suppose if it's a case of we're transitioning to this new packaging manager way of doing things, which is it's a lot better, it's a lot cleaner. I'm not. If you're looking at my screen now, it's a case of in the assets folder now. There's nothing else. We're installing XRTK. Yeah. There's nothing in my assets folder. Nothing's going to get overwritten, changed, switched.
Exactly.
And means making upgrades, which we'll try and demonstrate even easier as well. So,
I mean, imagine in other node-based projects and frameworks. Imagine all your node modules would be inside your actual project or source folder. That's kind of a hell. So I think I really like that we have our assets folder now for our own stuff. It's just what's basically part of our own work mostly, and that's a really great thing.
Yeah, it's a much cleaner separation. So right now that Unity is the common joke I make in any dive demo, if I go to a conference or something and I'm demonstrating using Unity, it's finding something to do in the intervening time between selecting something to import and Unity finishing loading. Usually there's a dance involved. In editing videos, you can easily skip it past, but we love it. So first thing you'll see is that once Unity XRTK is actually registered and in live, so in the bottom half of the screen here, you can see that the XRTK is done. We also then get this prompt of, do we want to enable XR in the project now for 2019.1? That will actually be the XRTK checkbox, is the XR checkbox in the project settings for the LTS of 2019 and also for 2020. Obviously, that has changed, and we're still sort of assessing I think the best way to do that. We'll probably say we'll check other things like checking the scripting backend to make sure that the performance of the project is all set right. If you've got certain platforms selected, that you also got the best environment settings for those platforms. But for the actual XR settings, I'm using quotes now, that may change. And you can choose to apply this now, which means XRTK sets it up for you. Say later, so not now. Or you can ignore it and just do it completely yourself. No thanks. The only thing we really stipulate on is IL2 CPP. Just from the performance aspect and for building and everything else, it's simply better than trying to do native C#. It's just Unity's phasing out all that other stuff, so keep stuck with the future. So I'm going to apply that now, and so in there, I've now got. Right, Unity's still thinking. I can't click anything. It's still thinking. Oh, it's still resolving package. Once you've selected, it's still not ready there. Just go. Yeah, oh, there we go. Okay, right, we're installed. So we've got the XRTK core. So this is everything that makes up the actual core project itself. And we've also got our SDK, which is still a little bit light at the moment, but obviously that's the focus of our 0.3 release. We'll be hard hitting that SDK, putting loads of features and things in there. Yeah, and a quick call out to our MRTK buddies, because they're going ahead with our SDK and they're doing things like this, which is an awesome little flip out UI menu. And the XRTK who are paired with the MRTK, we work off each other and what we're going forward. We might have different approaches for how we implement things, but these are the kind of things we want to see. Now, obviously, this is very enterprise focused, showing this nice little flip out menu, pushing a button, having an animation, flipping things out. But we'll also have more gamey features and all of the kind of approaches that you might find in different types of more community-wide projects, as it were. I'm doing very expressive things here. And the cool thing is that in the way that we're designing things for the XRTK is that you'll have the UX. So what you see on screen here with this little, you'll see pushing a button, an animation, and something flipping out and being available. And then the wiring for how that works with the XRTK will be separate, which means if you wanted to, you could then use that UX in something else. We're not bound to it. We're all about the community, and also that makes it a lot easier for any of our designer partners to push forward new SDK controls. Without having to worry about how XRTK does it, they can do quick demos and just push a UX thing, and then we'll wire it up with all the plugs, hooks, things, events, and how you'd want it to work. So lots of fun things ahead. So anyway, I'm really excited for 0.3 and our focus on the SDK. So you've no doubt got controls and things you're using in your projects which you'd like to propose. We've got our partners who have got things prepared and going forward. And a lot more style and theming around a lot of those things work, hopefully. It's exciting times. So, back in our Unity project here, here's our sample scene as we get Unity, and then we got this nice little new menu option, and all we do is hit configure. One of our base principles with the whole point of the XRTK is that we have a case of you got your project, you import XRTK, you configure, you run. From day one, okay, so that's always been a guiding principle of that. Low barrier of entry to actually get things in and get things running. And in here, what this has done is this has set down the boilerplate or the framework of what is the XRTK. And these things, generally speaking, in your experience, we don't touch these. We have the toolkit and we have the play space. And once it's in, you don't touch that. In fact, I think in some of our examples, what we do is we move the toolkit and this play space, so the rig that is set up the camera, the body, your arms, and everything else, and we move that into a separate project so that you never have to worry about it. That's just the presence of the person or the character of the animal, whatever. I suppose a good thing to talk about here is that whereas you might see with other projects that they have lots of game objects and things like this, if I click through this and go, I've got one object with one script on it, and then everything else, apart from the camera, are just game objects. They're just placeholders which do things. There are no scripts, no extra things to put on here. It's a case of we have in the Mixed Reality Toolkit one mono behavior, which lies behind one of its most awesome powers by not using mono behaviors through the entire scene for running the toolkit, the engines, the platforms, the systems. We don't need any of that. We just have one mono behavior. We actually get an 80% speed improvement from just doing that. The toolkit runs all the services, all the projects, all the platforms, and we just have one toolkit in the scene. In there, then in this play space, we have the play space, which is actually your movement area or boundary from where your character is placed in the scene. Always, this is generally put at 0, 0. If you're going to move your player or your character in the scene to another start location, you actually move the scene. You place the start position in the position where you actually want the actual character to begin in. I think it's true. Have you actually had any multiple spawn position kind of projects, Dino? Or we always basically said put the scene and the player at the starting point?
No, unfortunately not. So I usually always manage to somehow have my players start at the origin.
Yeah, it's a case of move the scene, and I think if there's a call for that, we need multiple spawn points. We probably have some kind of spawn system which realistically would move the world around the player. That's the key thing, is everything's centered around the player's experience and what they're seeing, what they're doing. And the headset, almost always, by how the platforms work, it'll always start at origin, because then that's how it attracts the environment and things like that. So, in our play space, we have the beings of our camera rig, which in case of there's the player's head. This is what they see. That's the one and only camera. I think you can have multiple cameras in the system and work around them, but effectively this is the VR, AR position camera in the scene. We have one component which basically then also has an additional camera, but that's used for raycasting, which is placed at a specific position with the player, and that's where all the castings or the interactions or everything else is thrown from it. And also that is what we use for interacting with the Unity UI system. I think one of the most interesting things is how that changes to the new UI system that Unity is going to do. But
yeah, I think no one knows.
no,
Somehow.
The UI elements are interesting, but effectively, in your project again, you don't have to worry about that. The XRTK will evolve with Unity and how it changes. We take the pain, so you don't have to. We do the work. Then under the head, which is we have the player's body, and this is usually used for solvers and things which attach to the actual character, the main player, or for any other interactions we work on, the case of how high the person is, how we position things around the player, and a lot of different interactions. And as the project's running, it's a case of we will add things into this space. So we will add controllers, or we'll add hands, we'll add other things to do with that's there, but this is all managed by the XRTK. So effectively, it's good, it's there, but you don't need to mess with it. What you do need to do however, is the toolkit itself. Now, another one of the big powers, let's say if I'll pop this inspector out to make it a little bit more full screen for fun, is that the entire of the XRTK is driven by configuration. There's no swapping assets in and out. There's no changing components here and there. We have a configuration system, and at the moment, it's starting easy. It looks complex when you're looking at the beginning with all these different system things set up. But once you get used to it, it becomes very easy to go and find what you want and just configure it. How you want your scene to react, how you want your boundaries to work, how you want teleporting to work. If you're an AR solution, how your spatial awareness and mapping works, if you have a networking system. And what we simply do is we just clone this, and then this becomes our config. And what essentially will happen realistically is that when you first import a platform, it'll create a copy of that platform's config in your project. So over here now in my assets folder, I've got this XRTK generated folder along with custom profiles. And this will have all the profiles and config that I actually need for my project that I've customized, and it's my own, not relying on any defaults. In here then we've got camera profiles, which configure how the camera is set up for each of the different platforms. We also have the input system and how that's configured, and so on and so forth. So within the input system, we have then a set of different other options. In here we can see where we've got controller profiles. Now what this does is say, these are all the different controllers that I've configured my project for. So here I've got like a mouse. Yeah, let's go back, let's clone this so we can actually see it better. So we've got mouse, joysticks. These are all things can be configured by default. And the Oculus provider, some of these will light up as you add new platforms. And also more importantly, in case we then can just turn them off. Or if you want to, you can just delete them and then re-add them yourself later. Generally what I've done is that in each one of these configurations, and you'll see this throughout the system, and this sort of leads into our next sort of topic around it, is the whole platform system that runs the XRTK. So in all these areas where we can configure platforms, we have a drop down that shows which platforms you've had enabled for your system. This is filled by what platforms I've actually installed. So as I add new platforms, this drop down simply adds new platforms, and I can then switch and choose. The XRTK's platform system is very, very powerful now, and it's also bound to the different platforms and projects in there. The slight differences where how this is working in current development and how it worked for the actual 0.2 release, and we'll probably do a refresher at some point in the future. But the principle is the same. I've got my mouse, it's going to run when it's in the editor and when it's on these different platforms, and I can turn on and turn off which ones I want. And if I want to disable it, I'll just say nothing, which means this provider, the mouse, will never run. Or if I say, okay, well, I actually really want it for the editor, I can turn that back on. And I'm just configuring this. I don't need to do anything. Don't need to install something else. It will just work. And the same with all of these, and especially when you get down to other providers as well. So like the Oculus controller, it's not showing in this version that's currently on public, but we actually have an Oculus platform. So if I have the Oculus the actual Oculus platform installed, I get an option for Oculus. And the way the XRTK works is that we've defined how Oculus would work. So I've got a headset, the API's installed, the Oculus software is installed and things like that. There's DLLs and registered menu available, but Oculus will only start when Oculus is there. Windows Me actually will only start when Windows Mixed Reality is there. And you'll see, as I said, this is throughout the solution, and so you have a familiar way of configuring things. We also have the same with visualization. So visualization effectively, if I clone that as well, make it a bit more readable. Visualization basically says that this is what I see on screen when this controller is defined, and you have control over this too. Everything you're seeing here, so we've got like a default controller, so it shows a hand left and right. But for each platform, each controller, I can change what that is. I simply say, right, well, that's the default, but for Windows Mixed Reality, I want to set a different model for my left hand, and I want a different model for right hand. And again, that's just from default. But obviously, you can augment that as your project's running. If you want to swap a hand out for a gun, or change a controller for something else, or have some weird robot hands, you can do. And then the last thing realistically to talk about is sort of the controller mappings. So going into the controller mappings, I can change how my game works with my project. So if I go into like the Oculus Go controller here, I get a nice image of the actual controller itself, and I can change what things do. And one really key factor here is that, and a lot of other providers are sort of in parallel, we've been talking with them, we've all taught the same thing, is that we're changing how you map controls. So how you set up the controllers, so what buttons do what, is different to what your project does. And this is sort of a separation from how platforms work to your project works. So that's roughly configuration. And we don't need to go any more than that. You can explore, see all these different options are, how they different work. Bear in mind, some of these will be changing with the 0.2 release because we've refined some of these things, but we're keeping it to this way now. Now, it's not ideal, and we welcome feedback about how best to sort of convey the configuration to a project. So generally, this is just design time configuration. Once you've worked how these things work, it will just work, and then you won't really change that. And very rarely you have need to go into these configuration settings and change them. But one last thing I'll say is that in every one of these systems, as we've said, the whole architecture and framework of this project is set up so that it's extensible. So if you don't like the boundary system, or if you don't like the networking system, or you don't like the teleportation system, you can write your own. Now you think, oh, well, there's a lot of boilerplate I'm going to have to change in the toolkit, the project to make this work. But no. In your Unity project, as you can see here in the configuration, if I've written another camera system, it will as long as you comply to the camera system interfaces, it will simply show up here and you'll just swap it out. Same with almost every single other system, and you'll see this everywhere. XRTK will detect if you've set up a new diagnostic system, if you set up a new networking system, so long as you comply to the interfaces that tell the toolkit what that thing is, it will just show up and you'll change it. So here you can see the defaults that we've got, but I could just easily go and write my own. And we definitely will do a deeper dive on that one, what we do know, because it's a fun thing to extend.
Yep.
Right, okay. Well, that's the beginning of it. If I wanted to, I could hit play with the system, but I've got nothing really to show at this point in time. So I think we should need to up a gear in Dino, and what do you say we start talking about some let's get handy. I'm going to keep using that joke as much as I can. It's a handy thing, so I pass the floor to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks for the great insight on how you actually created all of this and how it's to be used. And so once everyone's got that in your own project, you can actually start using hands once it's in. So I should try probably and share my screen now. Let me know, Simon, once we can get started.
Yep, it's all loading. I must say, Dino, I am hands-on impressed. I'm again hands-on impressed with this scene, because it's unlike a lot of different example scenes where it's just something floating in space, or it's sort of a huge range where there's just lots of things to do. You've created a scene which is very focused, of like just testing effectively creating a test station of just what you can do. Some of the best examples we have got going so far.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I actually just started playing around once I got frustrated with some bugs, and then I needed a break from everything and started creating this room. And I think, it turned out pretty well. And it contains all of the demos in this case. So this is the hands example scene, which will be available in the XRTK examples project once we get it merged in. And actually, let me just get started so we can see the demo at work, and then I can walk everyone through how it's set up and why things work the way they do. Just a second until I get my quest started.
Yep, and this is what I love about this is that we're not just showing you made up things. Dino's putting on his quest and running Unity and showing us what you can see through the quest size in the editor with his hands. It's brilliant.
So at this point, you should be seeing my hands, right?
Yep.
Because I'm
I think you need to hold them a bit further up because they're low on the screen.
Yeah, I've left the real world. I can't see what's happening on my PC screen. So I mean, obviously this hands implementation looks a lot like other hand implementations. MREK and others have created something like this. So joints are visualized. I have at my right hand right now, I just configure it to visualize gizmos, so I can check the rotations. And on the left hand, I'm just visualizing small like bones for each joint. And we can also see how the pointer, the far interaction pointer, disappears once my hand is not in a pointing pose.
Yeah, I think one thing to see in the stream there is obviously that we do see a bit of jerkiness there, but I think that's just the editor catching up. In your eyes, you've got no lag at all there, and I think we see that if you hold your head still and move your hands, it's working. It's just Unity keeping up.
Yeah. Okay. I will try and work in slow mo. So if I move my hands back down, you can hopefully see that I can interact using the pinch gesture with all of the buttons. I can also far interact with these 3D buttons. So this is not a Unity canvas UI, it's just a 3D button. And I can also press it with my index finger, for example. And so that's how interaction with UI elements is supposed to work. Then to the right, we can see this is just a small visualizer to show us that how the system is actually tracking our hand poses. So this is something I'm still working on, but it's already working pretty good. So we can teach the system any custom pose really for the hand, and then have it recognize that pose and, for example, perform any input action in that case. And I can also choose to, for example, not visualize my hands at all. Ignore the gizmo for now. That's just a debugging feature. And then all right, so at the grab station here, we can obviously grab things. You can also grab two hands. This works from far and from near. I just can't get any closer right now because teleportation with hands is not available yet, but I'm working on it. And we also have this cube up here that we can do far interaction with and manipulate its position. So this is an already existing SDK component of the XRTK. It's called Manipulation Handler. You can just attach it to any game object with a collider, obviously, and then you can configure how it should behave when your users try to manipulate it. So is the editor still fine on your side?
Yep, all good.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so now we have another station, which is my favorite one. This is the physics area over here. But since I'm kind of limited right now with my space where I can move, I need to get the... So actually, I just picked up Oculus Touch controller. and the system just smoothly transitioned to controller input. As soon as I drop the controller on my table again, we will see that I'm back at my hands. So we can transition between controllers and hands. So as soon as you pick up your controllers, hands get disabled. And then once you drop the controller, hands get automatically enabled again.
Yep, which is
so
awesome.
at the physics station, this is an optional feature, so we can enable physics. And what this does is that we can use Unity's physics system to interact with things and apply forces to them. So we have two modes here. We have hand and fingers, which I will rename in a future pull request to high detail and low detail, basically. So hand means there is only one box collider around your hand that's basically encapsulates your hand. So this is, for most cases, this is actually enough. So if you don't care about precision, it should work good. So we can also use high precision mode, which is currently labeled fingers. And this one means that we now have capsule colliders around our joints, connecting all of the joints. And we have a really high detailed collision control with our hands now. So we can actually, it almost feels real, like we are touching things and we can move them around. This is just using Unity's default hinge joints and sphere colliders. And that's basically all it needs to have this demo station running. And then everything else is done by XRTK.
Yeah, I must admit, when I demoed and tested with those hands, that did feel like I almost had the balls in my hand as moving.
Yeah, it's really nice. You can really, this kind of really feels like you're holding it in your hand. It's just a very nice feeling. Just give it a try. I might come up with some more fun physics experiments over here.
Yeah, well, we can probably, like some other people have had, I think we could probably have a physics lab at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it for the demo now. Let me get back into the Unity editor so I can run you through all the setup. Just a second.
I can say anything about Dino now, he can't hear us. But I mean, yeah, then I love the scene. Even from the moment I put it on and just looking at it and using it, it's just great.
All right, awesome. So you should be seeing my Unity editor now again.
Yep.
Not going to talk about the scene. This is just plain old Unity stuff. And so let's get started with Mixed Reality Toolkit. You already showed it in your previous demo. So once again, let's select Mixed Reality Toolkit. And then obviously, if you think about hands, you're going to find all of that inside of the input system. So open up the input system. And in here, we already see that we have global hand settings. So these settings, rendering mode is, for example, how you want your hands to be rendered. You can either choose not render at all, joints, or have a mesh render, which is almost done. And this is basically what this demo station over here does. So you can change any of these configurations during runtime as well. This is just the initial configuration. And what global means in this case is that any of the platforms, for example, Oculus hands, can choose to override any of these settings. So if you want your joints rendered on Windows Mixed Reality on HoloLens, and you don't want them rendered on Oculus, you can do that by, for example, setting joints and then overriding that value in the Oculus data provider, which I will show in a minute. And then again, it's really just a lot of settings. We have some tracked hand poses here, which is the recorded hand poses I mentioned. So let's look at thumbs up hand pose, for example. So you can assign an ID here, you can describe it, and we have some recorded in JSON format, some recorded joints data here. So we will have a hand pose recorder that will output this kind of data. And then once you have that, you can actually plug it into this scriptable object asset, and then get your pose recognized. For that to work, obviously you also need to update the baked data. So in order to improve performance during runtime, we pre-calculate some of the data about this pose in editor, and then we can just use it later on to recognize the pose while we are running. And this asset here you can create using assets, create Mixed Reality Toolkit. So this is where you can find all of the asset types that you can create for XRTK. So inside the input system, we have hand controller pose. So if you were to create your own pose, this is where you can actually create the asset and then fill in all the data. This is a work in progress as well, simulation. So you can set a key code on your keyboard to simulate this pose. So if we use hands in editor without a proper device, we can press, for example, in this case, key code 4, the alpha 4, and then our simulated hand will move into the thumbs up pose. And then we have control action mappings, as Simon mentioned. And actually, we don't have any. We just have one mixed reality hand controller for any of the platforms. So if we open up that, you can see that.
Yeah, which makes sense because you only really have one pair of hands. They're going to work.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what you're using, it's only going to work one way.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just one pair of hands, and then you can assign your input actions in here. So we will do a deep dive video, I guess, tutorial on all of this at some point. Essentially, what we do here is we tell XRTK whenever the hand is in a grip pose, we actually want the input action named grip to execute, to be raised. And actually we have, this is also work in progress. Simulated hands are still a little bit separate. We almost have them at a point where they are identical to the actual runtime hands. It's just a few more input action mappings it needs to work, but I'm working on getting rid of all of this, so we actually at some point will only have one controller mapping for any kind of hand. And then down here we have all of the data providers. We can see we have Windows Mixed Reality, we have Lumin, and we have Simulated, and obviously Oculus, what we used just now. And that's it. So those data providers, what they do is they convert the native hand data to our cross-platform hand data, basically, and they do the joint mapping so that Windows Mixed Reality joints are mapped to the joints that we expect them to be when our XRTK code runs. And yeah, we have the runtime platforms here. So for example, Oculus will obviously run when targeting Oculus, and it will also run when the editor is on the Oculus target, which is the Android build target. And also, for example, Windows Mixed Reality doesn't work in the editor. So this is actually something I need to change. Windows Mixed Reality should just be enabled on Universal Windows, because right now it will only work when running on the device. We don't want this data provider to run when we are in editor, basically. So far, I mean, at some point I'm hoping to be able to use holographic remoting to use hands in editor while connected to the device, which would be great. And that is actually everything there is to hands in terms of configuration. We can obviously change some of the pointer settings, but that's the same thing for any of the other controllers. So from a user's perspective, when you're using XRTK, it's all just controllers. It doesn't matter whether it's a hand or not. So you can define your input actions in the input action profile and then assign them to any controller that supports it. I think that's all I wanted to show at this point. this scene is available in the hands branch right now and should be merged to development really, really soon, hopefully. I'm working on a last bug in Windows Mixed Reality, and once that one is in, we can get those merged in, and then we will move on with Ultra Leap support and Lumin support, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it is all fantastic stuff. So this is prime target for the 0.2 release, and so it'll be one of our last checkpoints to actually get the whole release out. So you get it without having to go through all the development setup. You'll be able to actually just get this straight from the actual npm packages. We do have development npm packages, but they are a bit funky at times to try and get hold of. And I've just realized that's one thing I didn't show.
Yeah, exactly. So we have. I think I'm still sharing my screen. So
yeah. So yeah,
we actually get. Well, in this case, I'm not sure it'll display preview because I have symbolic links, obviously, to all the XRTK modules. But so if you use XRTK without all the development setup, you will see that it will be labeled as a preview. So there is preview package available for XRTK, which you can get from the Unity package manager, just like, for example, with this 2D sprite shape package. Which is a cool thing. Yeah,
you need to enable that the advanced option there. If you go to advanced, and there's a show preview package to make sure you actually show those up. If you want to live on the edge and see exactly what the cutting edge of what things we do. But if you want to work things, well, I suppose the last thing on that really, Dino, is that you're using these hands settings and projects in your actual project as well. So you're testing, you're cutting hands on the actual front line.
Exactly. And I'm really looking forward to people starting to use it, because I've been working for a long time on this, on and off, obviously. But I'm really excited for everyone to try it and give some feedback and what people will be able to create using it.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to look forward to making some more demo scenes for that. Example working scenes with more, I mean, like an engine toolkit kind of thing, or whatever. So it's all good. Well, yeah, I suppose. Yep. We probably run on longer than we expected, really, because we just had. I think we just have too much fun of these things.
Yeah, it feels like we are running way longer than we expected.
Well, again, yeah, it's so. If there are specific, if you've been tinkering with the XRTK and there's things you want to know about, just drop us a line, either in Discord or on the actual GitHub. We're always I think we're always happy to talk about these things, aren't we? Just generally speaking, yeah. That's when we're not quashing bugs and getting pesky hand things to work. But expect to see more soon of how these things work and how they get put together and what we can do. So roll on the next release, and we'll sort of look at putting a schedule up of kind of things, subjects we want to try and talk about in future sessions. So
yeah.
Okay, so
thanks for having me again.
Right, okay, so and so that's us. So I'm Simon. My details are here on screen, and you are.
My details are hopefully also on screen.
Yes, they're also on screen, and also all the link. We like to close this out with all the different information that we got around there. How to find us, where we are, reach out, talk, chat, Discord.
Most importantly, Discord, I think.
Oh yeah. We're very active on Discord, especially when we're chatting about different platforms and things and what they mean. As new contributors or platforms come on board, or as talking to us, chatting us, we try to keep as much as we can public. There are some things which are sort of NDA, where we're working with platform providers to try and work out or right now to get into the project. But where we can, everything's up front and ready. Okay, so we are the XRTK, bringing you live from the stage on this recording. and we'll catch you again. So, goodbye.
Bye.